In this video, we'll be going over some of the best Dark Magician cards to complement the worst Dark Magician card video I made years ago. And at number 10, we have the Magician of Black Chaos Max. This is a ritual monster who's the direct retrain over the Magician of Black Chaos, which is a subset of Dark Magician cards, which simply has the effect that when it's special summoned, you contribute one monster in order to make it so your opponent can't activate monster effects this turn. And also, if it destroys that monster by battle, you get to add a spell card in your graveyard to your hand. Very reminiscent of the Dark Magician of Chaos card, which allows you to add a spell card to your hand during the end phase of the turn it's summoned. Now, what's important about this card is that first effect, which is basically the same as Outer Entity Azathoth, a card currently on the Forbidden list for being able to lock your opponent out of monster effects in the turn it's summoned. And the reason Magician of Black Chaos is not banned for basically having the same effect is because they knew it had a strong effect when they released it. That's why they gave it the tribute cost. Ritual monsters are inherently just harder to summon than extra deck monsters anyway, so that should have been good enough to balance out the lockdown effect on its own. But adding a tribute cost requirement on top of it was really going the extra mile that allowed it to not be completely broken, but still a good effect. If you're able to bring this card out during your opponent's turn, you can just end their turn, which is possible thanks to the Dark Magician quick play spell card, Secrets of Dark Magic, or using Megalith Ankh, which allows you to ritual summon during your opponent's turn while also using itself as one of the materials. And that's where Magician of Black Chaos Max enjoyed its competitive success. It had a deck that would use Megalith Ankh in order to bring it out during their opponent's turn to simulate how Outer Entity Azathoth was used. It is a somewhat competitively viable way to lock your opponent out of monster effects for a turn, which can kind of win you the game on its own sometimes. But Megalith decks don't really see very much competitive success, so it's not a huge problem, nor does it see huge representation either, which is why it's only at the bottom of this list. And I don't think it sees any play at all in normal Dark Magician decks. And at number 9, we have Ebon Illusion Magician. This is a rank 7 Xyz monster, which requires any 2 level 7 monsters as materials, so completely generic, and also has an alternative summoning condition where you can rank it up on top of a rank 6 Spellcaster Xyz monster. I assume the intended way to bring this card out with its alternative method would be on top of Magi Magician Gal, which is a pretty decent rank 6 monster, but it's never been released to the TCG for censorship reasons. I think the story goes that the creator refused any censorship on that card, and they refused to release in the TCG without censorship, so it was just never put out. But I don't know if that's 100% true, and I don't really care, as it's mostly brought out with 2 level 7 monsters anyway, and not ranking it up on top of a rank 6 Xyz spellcaster. Now, the card has 2 effects. One of them allows it to detach a material to special summon any spellcaster type normal monster from your hand or deck. And its other effect is if a spellcaster normal monster declares an attack, you can banish 1 card your opponent controls. Generally, extra deck monsters that can special summon monsters from the deck have been historically very strong, although limitations on this one of being a normal monster heavily helped in this card not being overpowered, but still appropriately powered, as that monster that could be brought out could be used to banish a card if it attacked. So it fit in perfectly with Dark Magician decks, who get into level 7 monsters pretty easily, i.e. Dark Magician itself, can bring out Dark Magicians from the deck, and then banish cards whenever they attack anything. It did also see play in Pendulum Magician decks, as they can bring out level 7 monsters pretty easily, and also have normal Spellcaster Pendulum monsters that get special summoned from the deck in order to activate its effects. And at number 8, we have the Dark Magicians. This is a fusion monster which only requires 2 materials for its summon, and one of those materials being a Dark Magician or Dark Magician Girl, and the other material being any Spellcaster type monster. And its effect on the field is that if a spell or trap card is activated, you get to draw 1 card. And then if it's a spell or trap card, you can set on the field and then activate it this turn if it was a trap or quick play spell card. And the Dark Magician archetype has a lot of trap cards that they would love to be able to activate in their first turn, like Eternal Soul, which allows them to go +1 by searching a support card or special summon a Dark Magician from their hand or graveyard. Or maybe Destined Rivals, which allows you to negate all of your opponent's card effects for that turn. Magician's Combination, which is a 1-turn Omni Negate, or even Magician's Navigation to just special summon 1 more Dark Magician from your deck. And Dark Magician decks actually have a way to top deck these cards pretty easily, with cards like Soul Servant, that essentially allows you to place any Dark Magician support card on top of your deck from your deck, graveyard, or hand. Or even more minorly with Dark Magical Circle, which can allow you to rearrange up to the top 3 cards of your deck. There's also the case where it just lets you draw a card after a spell or trap card is activated. So if you bring out the Dark Magicians and then just activate a spell or trap card, you get to draw a card immediately, even if you're not trying to stack a good trap card on top of your deck in order to activate its effect during your first turn. It also works during your opponent's turn too, and works on cards you already have on the field. So if you use Eternal Soul during your opponent's turn, you'll be able to draw a card. And if it's destroyed, it allows you to float into 2 cards, Dark Magician and Dark Magician Girl from your hand, deck, or graveyard. So even if the card is an inherent -2 in card advantage with the fusion materials and fusion spell card required to bring it out, or less advantage if you use something like Magicalized Fusion to use materials from your graveyard, or just using the Eye of Timaeus in order to only use a single monster in the field for its full fusion summon. Whatever the case, it'll eventually gain the advantage back through its wonderful effects of just drawing a card every turn, and its floating effect, which allows you to immediately make up for the advantage required to bring this card out. So it's one of the few traditional fusion monsters that doesn't really have an alternative way to bring itself out easier, like Thunder Dragon Colossus or ABC Dragon Buster, but its effects generate advantage to the point where that's not a big deal. And being able to set up a trap card on your first turn is a big plus, especially since it works with any trap or quick play spell card. It doesn't have to be a Dark Magician specific one. They're just easier ways to set up Dark Magician trap cards on top of your deck. And at number 7, we have Dark Magical Circle. This is a continuous spell card, which when activated allows you to excavate the top 3 cards of your deck. Then if one of those cards is a Dark Magician or a spell or trap card that lists Dark Magician in its text, then you can add one of those cards to your hand and then place the rest of them on top of your deck in any order. Then if a Dark Magician is normal or special summoned to your side of the field, you get to target and banish 1 card your opponent controls. Both of these effects are hard once per turn, but its second effect to banish a card is a repeatable effect that can be used during each player's turn. Which means Dark Magical Circle basically turns any summon of a Dark Magician into a Caius the Shadow Monarch, which is one of the best monarchs from the Monarch archetype. And all that card does is allow you to banish 1 card when it's tribute summoned. And you can get out a Dark Magician way easier than having to perform a tribute summon, thanks to the plethora of support that brings out Dark Magician pretty easily, like Magician Souls or Eternal Soul. With Eternal Soul allowing you to special summon a Dark Magician during your opponent's turn, which can turn Dark Magic Circle into Disruption. This card turns what would usually be a pretty minor effect of being able to special summon a low attack, high level vanilla monster into an actual beneficial effect that you'd want to pull off on every player's turn, and was a big reason why Dark Magician decks became a top tier strategy in Duel Links when they released Dark Magical Circle to that game. And at number 6, we have Magician's Rod. This card is basically the standard searcher for the archetype. When it's normal summoned, you can add any spell or trap card from your deck to your hand that just lists Dark Magician in its text. Although funny thing about all these cards that allow you to search out Dark Magician support cards, they don't actually work on the Eye of Timaeus, which does list Dark Magician in its text, but doesn't count for Dark Magician support cards that list Dark Magician in their text, because the exact wording on the Eye of Timaeus is that it targets a Dark Magician monster, and not specifically the Dark Magician. Even though the Dark Magician in the Eye of Timaeus is spelled exactly the same as all of its support cards, with the correct quotation marks around its name, signifying a named card, but it technically isn't referring to the exact Dark Magician, so it doesn't count. Now, funny distinction aside, being able to search out all other Dark Magician support cards from the archetype is very useful, considering a lot of the best cards in the Dark Magician archetypes are spell or trap cards. And the card allows you to add itself back to your hand under a very specific condition, where, if it's your opponent's turn, this card exists in the graveyard, and you activate an effect of a spell or trap card during your opponent's turn, you can then tribute a spellcaster in order to add this card back to your hand. Although the main use of this card is just to use it to search out whatever combo piece you need the most, and is included in just about every single Dark Magician deck. And at number 5, we have Eternal Soul. Now, I've already talked about this card a couple of times in this list because of how prevalent it is with Dark Magician decks. And basically what it does is give all of your Dark Magicians an Ultimate Falcon blanket effect, where they're just straight up immune to your opponent's card effects. And also, once per turn, you can choose to activate 2 of its other effects, where you can either special summon a Dark Magician from your hand or graveyard, or add 1 of 2 Dark Magician support cards from your deck to your hand, with the better of the 2 being Dark Magic Attack, which allows you to blow up all of your opponent's spell or trap cards. And since you can use this effect during either player's turn, basically this allows you to search out a card during your opponent's turn if you don't have a Dark Magician to summon, in order to always gain advantage from it. It's an immediate +1 in card advantage if you use its effect a single time, which allows you to keep using its effect to search out cards from your deck. Or of course just bring out Dark Magicians from your graveyard in order to activate the effect of Dark Magical Circle during your opponent's turn to banish a card in order to disrupt plays. And because this card is so good, it obviously has a little downside to it, where if this card leaves the field, it destroys all monsters you control. Not just Dark Magician specific ones, so it creates a big target for your opponent to destroy it in order to blow up your field, A single MST on an Eternal Soul turns into a Raigeki. This is why Dark Magician decks will sometimes play Dark Magician the Dragon Knight in order to protect Eternal Soul. Although I'm not sure how common that combo is, it's just a combo that happens to exist, especially since it can be brought out with just a single Dark Magician and the Eye of Timaeus. The Eye of Timaeus does allow you to go into a lot of good Dark Magician cards, which is a shame that it can't actually be searched out with Dark Magician support. And at number 4, we have Apprentice Illusion Magician. This is a level 6 spellcaster type monster, which is an obvious retrain of Dark Magician Girl, and it's just chock full of really good effects that help support Dark Magician decks. It has an effect like the Tricky, where you can special summon this card from your hand by just discarding any other card, and then has an effect where if this card is summoned, you can add a Dark Magician from your deck to your hand. So if you special summon this card with its own effect, it basically allows you to go hand neutral, which is really good for a high level, decent attack monster that can special summon itself from the hand. It also has a hand effect similar to Kalute the Moonshadow, where if a spellcaster type monster is battling an opponent's monster, you can send this card from your hand or field to the graveyard in order to give that monster 2000 attack and defense during damage calculation, which is coincidentally the attack of this monster. And none of its effects are a once per turn, which means you can special summon multiple copies of them from your hand or stack multiple of its hand effects on top of each other. Oh, and also its attack boosting effect can be used while it's on the field too. So you don't have to choose to keep this card in your hand or bring it out if you want that attack boost. And it can be used after it's declared an attack in order to boost the attack of another monster you control. So Apprentice Illusion Magician is just all kinds of excellent. It does a great job of supporting the Dark Magician archetype while also having effects that are good enough for it to occasionally see play outside of Dark Magician decks. Although the reason that happens is because of another card on this list, which we'll go over later. And at number 3, we have Soul Servant. This is a quick play spell card, which allows you to stack any Dark Magician card on top of your deck, and it allows you to choose that card from your hand, deck, or graveyard, which is kind of unique for a card that allows you to stack the top of your deck. Generally, those cards are very specific about choosing a card from the deck, or graveyard, or hand, but I think this is the only card in the game that allows you to choose one of 3 places. And the deck is obviously the best thing to choose most of the time, but can allow you to reset garnets from your hand or graveyard if you want to do that instead. And with its ability to stack the top card of your deck from basically anywhere, this can allow you to combo really well with the Dark Magicians in order to immediately activate the effect of a trap card during your first turn, or to immediately special summon Palladium Oracle Mahad, which is a Dark Magician card that can special summon itself from your hand under the conditions that you drew the card from your deck, which can be helped along by Soul Servant's second effect, where if Soul Servant is in your graveyard and it's your main phase, you can banish this card from your graveyard in order to draw a number of cards equal to the amount of Dark Magician cards you control, or in your graveyard, equal to the number of Palladium monsters and Dark Magician or Dark Magician Girl cards with different names, which can allow you to draw up to around 4 cards, I think. But even the most standard Dark Magician deck should allow you to draw at least 1 card with the effect, which basically turns Soul Servant into an incredibly elaborate search card that allows you to stack the top of your deck from whatever you want from the archetype, and then immediately draw that card if you want with its graveyard effect, or have the card drawn by something else like the Dark Magicians, and then draw a card afterwards. Which also just has the potential to be a +3 in card advantage, which I probably don't need to tell you is super good. Although that's only a potential. I wouldn't expect to get a +3 in card advantage every time you used it, but even as just a search card that only draws 1, it's a super good Dark Magician support card bordering on almost broken, which is a surprise that there's 2 other better cards that beat it on this list. And at number 2, we have Magician's Souls. This is a Dark Magician card, which is so good that it made it on my list of the top 10 best level 1 monsters in the game. And the reason for that is because it's useful outside of Dark Magician decks, but also very useful inside of them as well. The effects of Magician's Souls are twofold. While it's on the field, you can send up to 2 spell or trap cards from your hand or field to the graveyard in order to draw that many cards. And there are a lot of decks that like to cycle spell or traps in the grave, in order to gain advantage from them later or just to reset them with recursion effects, like Eldritch for example. It also has the effect where if it's in your hand, you can send a level 6 or higher spellcaster type monster from your deck to the graveyard in order to either special summon this card from the hand, or to send this card to the graveyard in order to special summon a Dark Magician or Dark Magician Girl from your graveyard. So if you just send Dark Magician from your deck to the graveyard with its cost, you'll be able to special summon it with its effect, which is kind of a roundabout way of saying that this card allows you to special summon the Dark Magician directly from your deck. Although even if you don't want to special summon one of the Dark Magicians from your deck, You can just special summon this card instead, and then use its excellent effect to convert 2 spell or trap cards into 2 draws from your deck. And because both of those effects are so good, Apprentice Illusion Magician is almost always played alongside Magician's Souls, as the garnet of the deck that you want to send to the graveyard in order to fuel its summoning condition. And the reason Apprentice Illusion Magician is chosen is because it's useful even if you do unfortunately draw the card, as the ability to special summon monsters from your hand is kind of valuable in a lot of decks. Apprentice Illusion Magician has the distinction of being one of the best garnets in the game. It's excellent in its archetype, and it's also useful if you happen to draw into it if you're running the Magician's Souls engine. And because Magician's Souls is super useful in all kinds of meta decks, it easily earns a high spot on this list. It would have probably taken the number 1 spot if it wasn't for the actual number 1 just being kinda bonkers. And at number 1, we have Red Eye's Dark Dragoon. This is a boss monster which can be fusion summoned with Dark Magician and Red Eye's Black Dragon, or a dragon effect monster as its materials. And while it's on the field, it can't be destroyed or targeted by card effects. Up to 2 times per turn, you can destroy an opponent's card and inflict damage to your opponent equal to that monster's attack. Once during either player's turn, you can discard a card in order to activate its Omni Negate, and if you use its Omni Negate, it permanently gains 1000 extra attack. This is an example of a card that was kind of made overpowered on purpose to really play homage to old school cards like Dark Magician and Red Eye's Black Dragon, considering how popular those archetypes are, and to give people reasons to actually play those cards outside of their specific decks, just as the fusion materials to bring out this monster. Especially since this card is ridiculously easy to bring out with Predaplant Verte Anaconda and Red Eye's Fusion, which basically turns any 2 effect monsters you can get on the field into a Red Eye's Dark Dragoon, assuming you have the required garnets in your deck. Red Eye's Dark Dragoon is already banned over in the OCG for being too strong of a boss monster, and no one would be surprised if this card was eventually banned in the TCG as well. They just kinda gave this card every good effect you can give a boss monster, and then it made it easy to bring out to boot. And since it's technically a Dark Magician card, it easily makes the top spot on this list of the best Dark Magician cards. Alright, and that's the list. Are there any other Dark Magician cards that I missed that should have definitely made this list? If so, I'd love to hear about them down in the comments. Usually people don't say anything about cards I missed, so I assume I'm pretty spot on most of the time. Also, if you have any ideas for future archetypes for me to cover just like this, I'm always open for suggestions.